Hello, guys, girls, everything in between. Welcome to the last ever review session, Compounds 3 SK3 Numerical Methods. Um, so I'm going to try and give you guys some general tips on how to do well in the exam and stuff like that. If I am kind of welcoming questions, so if you have anything that you want to ask, please leave it in chat. I'll be looking at chat. I have my laptop open, so I'm looking at chat. But yeah, let's get started. So first off, I'm gonna start with like a quick overview on the lectures and what you should learn on them. So let's go with unconstrained optimization. Sorry, I'm just like referring to my notes here. Yeah. So in lecture 4, the most important thing to know is to understand the differences and the usefulness of each method. So kind of like when you should be using the analytical, when you should be using the Newton's iteration, and when you should be using the golden section method. If so, there's a section on that over here in this section, but it isn't complete, and there is way more detail on this in the textbook. So if you haven't already looked at that, you should look at that. There is a whole section on which methods to use and the motivation and stuff like that. I can guarantee you there's going to be like a part D somewhere which is going to be like, oh, why not use this, or what's the benefit of doing this for this particular section of 1D optimization. And since it's not in the slides, most will probably think it's like a harder question for people to solve. So I would say definitely like look at look at what you want to learn from that particular section specifically. And then let's also going to go to like open-ended questions that could be asked here. So the relative errors, you got to be careful with what you use as the new errors for iterations, because unlike the pre-midterm content, a lot of the unconstrained optimizations, optimizations in general, are going to be, the iterations are going to be very lengthy, so you might miss which value to use. And I'm speaking from experience because I tried a bunch of the practice problems for this chapter and it always trips me up. So maybe just consider that when you cover it. Okay. And the last point that I wanted to mention was about multidimensional unconstrained optimization. Try to keep track of your partial derivatives, right? That's always going to like be the biggest mistake. And don't try to, and remember that, you know, when you're doing a partial derivative, del x del y is not the same as del y del x. Remember the different classes of unconstrained optimization. So if there's something is a saddle, or if something is a is a hill, or so on and so forth. So that's just for maxima, not for minima, but you get the idea. And remember that saddle points technically do not have strictly defined minima. Talking about the terminology for this, the directional derivatives, the inner products, and the gradient of a function, a lot of people will have kind of like forgotten this if you've like not kept in touch with, you know, this like 1ZC3 content and things like that. So don't just like copy this onto your cheat sheet without understanding it. So that's like what I'd mentioned for this chapter. Otherwise, this is probably the second easiest thing in the post-midterm content. So try not to give this more than like a page, or maybe a page and a quarter, or maybe a page and a half at worst in your cheat sheet. More on that later. So that's like chapter 4. That's all the notes I have for chapter 4. Chapter 5, this is probably the hardest like one out of all the post-midterm content, simply because of how many options you have to deal with. So make sure you know the difference between each of these. So don't, if you want to save some space on your cheat sheet, don't write down the simple linear stuff or like the polynomial stuff. Just write the general linear least squares method, and then you can like generalize that for whatever you need it to be generalized for. Do not forget that this is probably one of the only lecture after this in lecture 6 and lecture 7 there's not much emphasis on error measurements, so focus on memorizing the error, like, or not memorizing, but like make sure you note down the standard errors for this stuff. And there's a really important thing about like the calculations for this, but I'll get to that in a second. And also this is probably the chapter where the textbook has the most extra content compared to the lecture slides. So, and by the way, that's fair game. Like, he can ask you stuff from there, like, because he, like, to him it's derived from the lecture slides. So if you, for those of you who don't know, the midterm one, which a lot of people found hard, a lot of the content from there was from the textbook. So if you had used the textbook to make a cheat sheet, you're probably in the clear. But if you didn't, or if you didn't attend the lectures at all, then you're probably not in the clear. So that is what I have to say about chapter 6. This is a very, like, fat chapter, so you should dedicate probably 2 pages to your cheat sheet on this. Okay, so chapter 5, sorry, this is what, lecture 6, chapter 5, numerical integration. This is the most, well, right before chapter 7, this is the most calculation heavy thing, but it is not hard. So I kind of want to like briefly explain the logic behind all of these because they all kind of tie into each other. So remember that when it comes to like plotting this out, the trapezoidal rule, this is fast and imprecise. So it's kind of useless to use the trapezoidal rule without anything else in context of it. And the same goes for the multiple application trapezoidal rule. This is not as good as other MA. This is like really important to remember. It's like a footnote in the slides or in one of the tutorial slides, I think. But I bet you that he might ask you to compare these. So might want to look into that. Simpson's rule is, this one is kind of useful in some cases. Remember the golden point, n must be even. A lot of people are going to forget this. You can't apply Simpson's rule broadly to everything, so make sure you pick your values correctly. Don't mix up 1/3 and 3/8 rules, because that's going to happen. And obviously make sure you write down these error equations. And if you don't want to, like, if you want to make this easier, you can expand h5 to b minus a by 3. So this goes 3 to the power 5 multiplied by 90. I think you get like 1/2880 a minus b, something like that. So you can just put that instead of putting this formula. This is in the textbook, by the way. So like I said, this chapter is very textbook heavy, so you can get a lot of tips from the textbook about solving problems in this chapter. Talking about also integration of equations, just don't bother. You're not going to be tested on pseudocode. And this is something that trips up a lot of people, Romberg integration. This, I'm just going to say it now, free marks. Literally, like, it's a lot of words, and I was talking to like a couple of other people at Thode earlier who were saying that they basically just put the entire thing onto their cheat sheet and they hope they understand it later. Don't do that, not for this. This is like the easiest marks you will get for, oh sorry, give me a second. Never mind. Yeah, this is the easiest marks you can get. I will put money down that this is going to be a question on the exam, or if not a question, a sub-question. It is so easy to do because all you have to really understand is you apply trapezoidal rule, and then just simplify it using this. Also remember that when you say j plus 1, bigger j gives the bigger j implies smaller h. So j plus 1 is going to be the h term that is the half of the other h term. So when you have h2 is h1 by 2, h1 is going to be the j term, and h2 is going to be the j plus 1 term. Don't get that confused. Yeah, but this example is really useful. So if you don't have this one on your cheat sheet, I definitely would put on my cheat sheet. Okay, moving on to, so that's all I have for this particular chapter. The derivatives is really easy. I don't even know what to like mention from here. Just copy paste them on. Yeah. I doubt they're gonna ask you numerical derivatives because they're very, very easy. But maybe it's like a 2-mark question or something. I don't know. Anyways, moving on to chapter 7. This is the hardest chapter, but the shortest chapter. So I would suggest, if you are like prioritizing, if you're like doing your chapters, do them backwards. Like if you haven't started like in earnest and were like planning to lock in like an all-nighter or something like that, I'd suggest you start backwards. Try to do like this first, or at least go over this first, and then like go on to the previous ones. In here, one second. The only thing I wrote down for this was to be careful of. This is also another error chapter that has errors involved in it, but only for the first one right before the Runge-Kutta. So you don't need to worry about the Runge-Kutta error. Like there's a big section in the textbook about Runge-Kutta error. You don't need to worry about it. If we get a 4th order Runge-Kutta, it's going to be pretty annoying. But again, it's just computation, so don't throw away those free marks. Like practice this a bit so that you can be so you can deal with it. And everything after page 17 is not included in this anyways. So that's everything I have for specific lectures. Now, like, let me just check the chat if I missed anything. Nope, we're good. Any questions on like specific lectures real quick? Because I'm going to go over some other stuff also, but just like anything about any of the lectures that you want like tips on, or like I can explain, I'm more than happy to. Okay, nothing. So moving on to like more sort of general kind of tips. One thing I would really advise is this exam is going to be a time crunch. If this exam is going to be like a serious time crunch, so I'll get to the second part of solving that in a bit, but the first part of solving that is learn your calculator. Like really learn it. The calculator can do a lot of things. It can do regression. Like you can calculate the A0 and A1 of a linear regression. You can calculate quadratic regression. You can use this for multiple regression by just replacing y as x2, and like you can get every single like measure of like central tendency that you want. Don't do this by hand. You don't need to do all those like questions by hand. It's totally acceptable to do like calculations on the calculator. There's no like rule that says you have to do it on paper. The more you can offload to your calculator, the better it'll get. Caveat with that, do not try this in the exam tomorrow if you have not tried it before. All right, like if you're why the time crunch? Because there's definitely going to be like way too many questions. There's going to be many subparts. If you remember, the midterm was like 2 questions, and that was pretty like if you have like a bad cheat sheet or something, there's definitely going to be like you're going to have to like hunt for stuff if it's a very dense cheat sheet. If you're trying to like recall how to do a problem, probably something like that. So this is just my read on it. I mean, feel free to disagree, but that's just my opinion. Yeah. So I think that a lot of people are going to end up wasting time on like if you over rely on your cheat sheet. Like if you think that it's 10 pages of a cheat sheet, like how could this go wrong? It can go wrong when you have to do a calculation like this, where you have to where the problem could ask you to do all of this, and then you mess up a single value somewhere, and now your entire calculation is messed, right? So use your calculator like as much as you can to store things, to keep track of numbers, And that doesn't just extend to like regression, that extends to like standard deviation values. You can do standard deviation like calculations, which is like one variable stuff, get like summations from there. If you want part marks, you might want to do that instead of just doing the regression inside, like if you're not very good at like calculator entry. Can I show how using an example? Yeah, sure. If you guys want to follow along actually with the calculators, I might as well just like explain it, like, and you can grab a calculator and try it yourself. So, 1 second. I can't really screen share a calculator, but you get the drift. Yeah, I'll put a link to this page. You can also just Google like FX991 MS2 MS, whichever edition you have manual. But yeah. So if everyone's got a calculator, or like if you're following along, whatever you like, the general idea is to set your calculator to the correct mode first. You can use the mode button to set your calculator to a mode. If you press mode 2 times, you get to a page that shows you SD, reg, and base. I can pull up the instructions here. So mode 2 to get into regression. You can choose which regression you're going to do from there. Linear, log, X, and if you see there's a tiny arrow on the right, which gives you more options. Power regressions, inverse regressions, quadratic regressions. So most of our regressions are linear, but you can do other stuff as well. If you want to, like, yeah, you know, if it comes to that. So trying to follow along with an example, let's just pick like, I'm just going to go back to lecture 5, and if you have, let's say, yeah, here you go. So, so you can see there's a bunch of X values, bunch of Y values, right? First thing you got to do is make sure there's no data in your calculator. So make sure you're in reg mode. You'll see it at the top of the screen. Press shift and mode to clear, and then you're going to see SCL, which is stat clear. So hit 1, and then you'll see stat clear appear on your calculator. Hit equals to clear the statistics. To do regression, all you got to do is enter all the data in, and to do data entry, it's X, Y format. So I'm going to put in like X1 and Y1, so I'll put 1, and then there's a comma button right next to your, like above the delete and AC buttons. So 1, 0.5, and then to add it to memory, you press M+, and you know that because it's got blue text underneath it that says DT, so that's data entry. So again, going back to the calculator, yeah, input sequence using the key sequence, X data, Y data, DT. So any blue buttons are active during the statistics mode. So DT, CL, SSUM, and SVAR, and distr are all active during this mode. So going back here, 1, 0.5, I'll press M+, and you'll see N equals 1. I'll go 2, 2.5. I'm like actually doing this right now, so you can also like follow along if you like. M+, you'll see N equals 2. 3, 2, M+, N equals 3. 4, 4, M+, N equals 4. 5, 3.5, M+, N equals 5. 6, 6, M+, N equals 6. 7, 5.5, M+, N equals 7. If you want to check the data you've entered, okay, fine. If you guys want the link, I'll just put it in right now, just to save some time. 1 second. Homepage. Yeah. There's a PDF of this as well. If you prefer a PDF, I'm just using the HTML version. I'll put it in the 3SK3 chat in case like people want to refer to that. I'll put in resources actually because it's there we go. Okay. So you can go to resources and follow along if you want to check. Like I would highly encourage, like if you've got like a few hours to spare, if you need a study break, just go through this page. It's like, it's a godsend. Anyways, going back to the question. So if you want to check the data you've entered, you press the up arrow on your calculator to scroll through the data. You'll see frequency 7, Y7, X7, frequency 6, Y6, X6, so on and so forth, and all the way up to the top. So I'm just going to hit AC to clear that and make my screen open, but that data is still in memory. To get different values, you can press Shift and 1 to activate the SSUM function. You'll see summation x squared, summation x, summation n, or just n. You can press the right arrow to get summation y squared, summation y, summation xy, and this you can use in any of the formulas if you want to get part marks. But if you don't want to get if you just want to get the actual answers, go to the next one along, which is Shift 2, which is SVAR. You'll see mean of x, population standard deviation, sample standard deviation, press right arrow, mean of y, population of standard deviation of y, sample standard deviation of y. A and B, that's the important ones. That's the correlation coefficients. Oh, sorry, that's the correlation coefficients. That's the that's A0 and A1. So if you put that in and then you hit equals, you'll see it matches the thing I got 0.0007142875 whatever. And then I press, and then I go back to that same page. I press B. I use the button to press the B result, and I get 0.83928 whatever. So that's the exact same answer. You can also get your calculator to round numbers if you don't want to like see all the decimals. Just press mode, 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 mode a bunch of times till you get to fix, psi, and norm. Fix allows you to set a number of decimal places. Psi allows you to set a number of significant figures. Norm just reverts it back to normal. Okay. But so this can give you the model y equals whatever. If you want to calculate the SR, you can do that too. You know, like this is all pretty standard stuff. You can also get the coefficient of correlation from here. That's next to AB. You'll see R, which is the coefficient of correlation. You can get R squared if you just type that in and use the square button. That's going to give you the coefficient of determination. Sorry, I can't speak. And yeah, that's all the statistical measures you need. It even asks for like standard deviation. You don't need to calculate anymore. It's just like, it's right there. Yeah, so definitely try and play around with this stuff. But that's just only one thing, like one of the many things the calculator can do. Your calculator has a complex numbers mode. I think maybe my memory is failing me, but I do remember like part of this like first midterm had some numbers like that, so you can do that. You can set your calculator to base calculation. So I'm going to go back to the manual and show you guys that there's there's base n calculation. So if you want to do easy binary, you can use a calculator like, you know, I think I've mentioned this before, but you know, worth mentioning again. You can, and the big one, the one that everyone seems to forget, this calculator can do integration and differentiation or at a point. It can do like definite integrals. It uses Simpson's rule under the hood. So if you want to do it, if you want to get the true value of an integral, if you want to check how close your answer is or how much the standard error is, if you forget how to do integration, no problem, just punch it into your calculator and do it. Like, so you can see there's an example here. You want to integrate 2x squared plus 3x plus 8 from 1 to 5. You're going to use you're going to set the calculator back to compute mode using the mode button. You're going to just and I would usually, whenever I start a new question, I clear all, so shift clear and then everything. So I just clear everything. Make sure your calculator is set to radians. So that you don't lose, you know, information and stuff like that. But yeah, you don't lose like, you know, grades for some stupid angle or a sine value or something like that. Anyways, so you can see the integration. You're pressing the integration button. You type 2. You press the alpha button to use to type in x, which is right above the brackets. So all integration must be done in terms of x. I'm going to use the x squared button to add a square. I'm going to press plus. I'm going to press 3 and then use alpha to type x again, and then just press and then 8, close the brackets, and then I'm going to use the commas to put in the ranges. So after I put the integral, I'm going to put a comma and I'm going to put the lower limit 1. I'm going to put a comma, I'm going to put the upper limit 5. I'm going to use a comma and then put the number of partitions in the Simpsons rule. So this is just, you know, the same stuff we've done in class. The calculator just does it for you. So try and use a big number of partitions because, as you know, the number of partitions is what makes the integral like more precise, what makes the result closer to the true result. So if I use n equals 6, you know, you'll get the answer. And there you go. That's pretty much how you do calculator stuff using the, you can get the results. So there you go. If you don't specify an n value, it'll just try a few till it gets the best case it can. Some complex integrals don't model this well. I mean, what questions do you want me to do? If you have a specific question for me to do, I'll be happy to do it. But like I said, I'm not really here to like solve questions. It's more just general advice. But yeah. Okay, so that's calculator stuff. Oh, your calculator can also solve equations. So basic calculations. Oh, sorry, that's not the one. Function calculations, solving equations using solve. you can solve equations. You can set your calculator to equation mode or matrix mode to solve matrix stuff. So, yeah. How hard is it to get a 50? I'll get to that in a bit. I just want to finish off the cheat sheet thing, and then I'll go for like general things, or like focus things. But yeah, so don't try to solve simultaneous equations by hand. Don't try to do Gauss eliminations and all that. Just punch it into your calculator. Like this thing can do quadratics, cubics, 3-degree simultaneous, 3 unknowns, whatever you need it to do. Just follow the instructions. Like here's an example of a 3 unknown simultaneous. There's a given example to test out if you want to learn how to do it. Put in all of your unknowns, hit the button, and you'll get all the values you need. It's that easy. Right, so that's enough calculator stuff. If you want more details on calculator, my guide is in the resources channel. I have like a written guide for like the important stuff. You can look at that. But yeah, try it out yourself. And please don't blame me if you try this out in the exam and it doesn't work. That's not my fault. You know, just like actually practice it. Alright, hello again. Sorry, this is a splice because the part after the calculator stuff got completely cut out from my recording. I hate Windows, and Microsoft needs to burn at the stake. So just gonna quickly re-record everything I said for the cheat sheets and the general advice. So just as a recap, I went over most of the lecture stuff already, and you should have probably seen some of the stuff about the calculator, how you can use it to do equations and solve simultaneous equations and do Gaussian elimination, stuff like that, and also how to do regression with it and so on. So just going to move on to the cheat sheet, which is a very important part of the course. Of course, when you have 10 pages to play with, it can be easy to get complacent, so I'll stop there. Do not take somebody else's cheat sheet and just use it as your own for the exam. Mainly because you will not know how it works. You spend a lot of time hunting around for stuff on the pages, and you will just find it really hard to work with. Instead, I definitely advise trying to source your cheat sheet from multiple sources. Or if you decide to make your cheat sheet from scratch, here's how I'd approach it. And you can see I've got a bunch of things that you want to put on the cheat sheet in order of priority. The first is slides. You should definitely have slides on there. The second is examples. These examples could come from the course slides themselves, they could come from the textbook, they could come from the tutorial slides, whatever you find easier. The third is questions, and the fourth is more questions. Yes, try and put questions on your cheat sheet because it'll make it easier to solve. If you can't remember how a formula works, you can always look at how it is applied to see how it worked. And it'll also give you some important information that you don't need to derive all the way again, just minimizing the amount of work you have to do during the exam. Number 5 is general notes. There's a lot of stuff in the slides that's going to get slipped between the cracks and so on and so forth. So try to put general notes in there, and these general notes could be from the slides or they could be from the textbook itself. So I really would recommend the textbook if you haven't already seen it. There's a lot of extra details in there that can help make your cheat sheet experience easier. In the slides, obviously you're not tested on proofs or derivations or anything like that, so don't bother memorizing those things. You can see over here I've got my notes for lecture 5. This is my cheat sheet for lecture 5, my cheat sheet for lecture 6, my cheat sheet for lecture, and I haven't done lecture 7 yet, I'm working on that. But if you have, you can see that I've mostly just put in like the end results, the end formulas, because that's all that's going to be tested, realistically speaking. Now, if you can't find a clean way to put down the formula, either write it out in Word or something, or just put it, look at it in the textbook. There's usually a nice boxed formula for you to screenshot and put in. I would definitely recommend doing your cheat sheet digitally, because if you don't, you're going to be like rewriting this a lot again and again and again, and there's going to be a lot of things that you're going to have to put down on paper, and it's going to waste a lot of time. If it helps you memorize it, then or like learn better, then sure, do it by all means, but just would recommend that you do it digitally so you can easily edit things and iterate on it. On that topic, I would definitely say to make a first version of your cheat sheet and then test it out using questions. So pick a past exam, pick a set of questions, pick some practice questions, pick some textbook questions that you haven't seen or done before, and only using your cheat sheet, solve them. If your cheat sheet comes up short, if you're missing something, instantly add it to the cheat sheet. This is how you make sure your cheat sheet is good. So please, 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 please stress test your cheat sheet. And that also goes for if you are using someone else's cheat sheet, if you're collaborating on a cheat sheet, whatever it is. Like definitely would suggest that you take these cheat sheets, look at what people have on there that's common, and look at what people add on as their own personal notes. That could be very useful for you to put to make your own cheat sheet, or when you decide to compile your own one. I would also recommend you just use your previous cheat sheet from pre-midterm stuff. So like you don't need to from pre-exam stuff. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. If it's worked for you, just use it. Only rewrite your cheat sheet if you got a really bad grade because of it, like you were missing some critical information or something like that. Would definitely recommend you rewrite your cheat sheet in that case. Also, don't forget that the formulae ain't everything in this course. This course isn't just plug and chug. That's only going to be the first half of it. So definitely there's going to be like some reasoning questions, some logical questions. So try and find the reasoning questions that might be asked throughout the textbook. There's a lot of explanations, a lot of motivations, a lot of graphs that seem incongruous to the formulae, but will probably be useful if asked up front. And those should definitely be on a cheat sheet if they aren't already. So you can see over here I've boxed in this sort of area marked with R and so on. This is from the textbook, so you should definitely be like looking at things from the textbook and trying to implement them into your own cheat sheet. So the best way to create the perfect cheat sheet depends on like what your goal is. If your goal is just to pass, then I would suggest you put on every single slide, every single tutorial, every single question you can. Quiz questions are not good to put on the cheat sheet because they're just too easy. Like you're not going to be asked those in the exam unless they're the plug and chug ones. So if you just need the plug and chug grades, if you just need like a 50 or whatever, just feel free, you can do that. You get a pretty good grade if you just do that. You get your like pass grade. If you're aiming for gold, I definitely suggest you try and look for like the connections between different chapters and put them in. I bet you anything he's going to try and link chapter 7 to chapter 1 and go, hey, here's the fourth order Runskura. Why don't you figure out how many bits it's going to take to truncate this result when it's O of 8. When it's O of H of 8 and the error has now reached 2 bits, you take 2 to the power 8 and then you get some value, something like that. So be careful with that, like really, really be careful with that. If you really want the grade, you're going to have to fight for those kind of like higher order thinking skills questions, that 20-30% that is going to be contested. Also, before I go too far, this cheat sheet that you have on screen, this is not just mine. This was built in collaboration with Maham and Yusra. So a huge shout out to them. They actually did most of the work for this. They proofread it. They were the ones who helped me typeset it and put everything in the right pages. Definitely would, a huge thank you to them for all of their help with this particular cheat sheet and throughout this exam season. Also would definitely recommend that if you want to stress test your cheat sheet in the easiest way possible, I would suggest you do some questions that are time crunch based. So if you remember, Moshe said that this entire exam took him 50 minutes to solve. It shouldn't take you longer than an hour and a half if you have a really good cheat sheet, if you have really good calculator skills, and you understand your cheat sheet well. So really, really try to understand your cheat sheet, try to understand its strengths and weaknesses. Sometimes you may not, when you look at a question, you may not remember the exact formula, but you'll remember where on your cheat sheet, like in which corner, like the top left or the third page or something like that, you remember that the formula was over there. It'll save you so much time having to hunt through it, trying to hunt through somebody else's cheat sheet or something similar to that. Also want to add on that this exam is pretty heavily weighted, so do try to take it seriously. I know it's kind of hard to find the motivation to work on this paper, but realistically speaking, it's a fun experience if you just spam problems, just lock in for a little while, put some music on, put some whatever your study environment is, set that up and just start spamming questions. If you put as many questions as you can onto your cheat sheet, I think that works pretty well for everyone. And if you do anything for this course, if you have no time, you're like, oh, I don't know anything, just get somebody else's cheat sheet, stress test it, modify it to fit your needs. Don't just think that because, hey, this question is not, I couldn't solve it, but it's okay, I can solve the others, this cheat sheet's good enough. Don't do that. like make it good enough for yourself, make it even better for yourself, so you can get 100 on all the practice tests, you get a really good grade on the actual exam. That way you won't even need to try that hard. So if you want to make your time easier past like 7:30 when you sit down and write, just make sure you test your cheat sheets, make sure you iterate on them, make sure you include the information you want to see instead of stuff that just looks flashy and makes it look like full of text and words and things on the display. I would also add that you should try to learn the calculator while you're trying to test your cheat sheet, if you can. If you don't want it, that's your choice as well, but just making your life easier again. The calculator doesn't make mistakes as long as you do the data entry correctly. And be aware of how midterm 1 and midterm 2 went. One was pretty confusing and out of the box, one was pretty standard, so I think the exam is going to be a hybrid of the two. So that is pretty much all I have in terms of the cheat sheet and general advice. Try to make sure you put in all of those relations between different things. So for example, you can see I put down when to use Newton and when to use Lagrange. This is again from the textbook, so just small things that are in the corner of slides in the corner of textbooks you'd like to put in and leave them be there in case you're asked something like that in the actual test. Make sure you understand your formulae well. These formulae have a lot of confusing symbols, and if you don't know what the symbols mean, they'll be completely useless to you in the exam. Found that out the hard way when I was doing LU decomposition in the exam and I didn't know what I'd actually written down in the cheat sheet. Try to make sure that for topics that are hard, you find places that extrapolate them easily. So sometimes that could be the textbook, sometimes that could be the slides, sometimes that could be your friends like class notes. If you prefer, you can ask Gen AI to do it for you, ChatGPT, Claude, whatever you prefer. I'm sure that it can cook up a nice, very dense explanation for you that you can screenshot or transcribe or write it down. If you solve questions that you find hard, your first priority should be putting them on the cheat sheet, because if they come again, you will thank yourself a million times over. All in all, try to reuse as much as you can. Try to share and pool with your friends to make the perfect cheat sheet. And tomorrow just spam problems and iterate your cheat sheet to be perfect. And once you step in the exam hall, there's nothing you're gonna memorize. There's no things that you gotta do. You just gotta roll it. If it's easier, you can put in some extra information like common derivatives, common integrals, or if you want to put in the calculator usage instructions, you can do that too. Just put it in really small and stick it over there. And yeah, so that covers everything I have for 3SK. If you have any other questions, feel free to put them in and I'll try and answer them throughout the day. If you have any concerns about this exam, don't worry too much. Moshe is more than lenient, and he'll probably give you a pity pass if it comes to it. We're all graduating students and he has no reason, no grounds to fail us all. So just do your best and try and focus on what you're good at for the past 5 years, which is just pushing through solving problems and stuff like that. And yeah, I hope this review session was useful for everyone. I hope you enjoyed this and other review sessions, and thank you all for watching. It was a pleasure working with you guys. Good luck on your final exam and have a good night.